are here to discuss
Sylvia Franken
VoiceOver
has joined the meeting.
and Safari, going over working with your Mac. So this is specific to Mac, how to web browse and some tips and tricks and some basics to hopefully
David Mandel has joined.
either get people going in the right direction or maybe help the more veteran user just maybe know some more things about web browsing. The first thing I just want to mention up front, I'm sure everybody here who has browsed on the web, and it doesn't matter whether you're a Mac user or a Windows user, doesn't matter what web browser you're using, the web is an adventure.
Cliff has joined the meeting.
One of the terms that I kind of say to my clients is it's like going into the Amazon with only a hand machete, because as a blind user, you really don't know what you're going to encounter on the web. And there is no guarantee of accessibility for every website that you decide to browse. So sometimes people drop this on it being, oh, because you're using a Mac. Oh, because you're using Safari on a Mac. Oh, because you're using VoiceOver. And it has nothing to do with the screen reader. It has nothing to do with the operating system or the browser in most cases. Yes, sometimes it is the browser. Sometimes certain websites are not optimized to work with, let's say, with Safari or with Firefox or whatever. So, one of the first kind of pieces of advice I offer people is as a Mac user, you should have multiple tools in the toolbox as far as browsers go. This lesson is dealing primarily with Safari, but a lot of this material can be applied to Firefox, Mozilla Firefox, Google Chrome, or the Brave browser. So there are other accessible browsers out there should you decide that you need to try a different browser to have a better experience with a website that might not be optimized with Safari. But sometimes, or most of the time, it really comes down to the fact that developers are not aware. I don't want to be mean about it, but they're not aware of accessibility. And some people don't even think blind people can use computers, let alone tie their own shoelaces. So making a website accessible for a screen reader is the last thing that they probably have on their minds or an understanding of, because realistically, most websites are designed for visual appeal. They want to catch the sighted users' attention and, attract them for their products or whatever. So in doing this, they often render the website pretty difficult for us screen readers to use unless they're smart enough to actually use the accessibility tagging and other strategies that you can find. And all you need to do is just tell a developer to just do a basic, internet search for how to make your website accessible. And there's places like the W3C, the World Wide Web Consortium, and other organizations that have a great deal of information that you can read and utilize to make your website accessible and check the accessibility of your website. And there are companies out there as well that will help you do that. But just be advised of this. As someone who has been hired to do web testing, accessibility testing in recent years, I am finding a disturbing trend of websites that simply put the statement somewhere on their site that says their website is accessible, and there's a button that says, enhanced for screen reader users, blah, blah, blah. Doesn't work. It's just, they just put it up there for the sake, I guess, of keeping any kind of legal stuff off their back. But it only takes the regular blind user 30 seconds to 5 minutes to figure out that their website, it's a lie, that they don't have accessibility on their site. I just dealt with this the other day with the website I was asked to check out, and they had all the accessibility information at the top and the menu for accessibility for low vision, and none of it really worked. And it's a shame that they would put something up there to lie, just to, I guess, keep their backside covered from any legal ramifications, but they're going to get some legal ramifications because of that. So with that said, let's start from the basics. So where I like to go first is the VoiceOver utility, and to talk about the web category, because there are some things you need to probably be aware of, how these VoiceOver preferences will affect your web browsing to various degrees. So I'm going to do a Control Option F8 here on my
Opening
computer.
VoiceOver utility. VoiceOver utility. VoiceOver utility window. Utility categories table.
So I'm going to interact here.
In utility categories.
And I'm going to
Table.
VO down
General.
arrow.
Verbosity. Navigation. Web.
To web. I'm going to stop interacting.
Out of utility categories. Table. Navigation.
And go to the right. So we have 3 tabs. Navigation.
General. Tab. 2 of 3. Web rotor. Tab. 3 of 3.
So there are the 3 tabs here.
General
so
tab. Navigation. Selected tab.
So navigation, we always, obviously tab number 1 in any of the VoiceOver utility categories that have subcategories. The first tab is always selected by default. So when it comes to the navigation tab,
General web rotor. Navigate web pages by.
The most important setting you have to consider is navigate web pages by. And there are 2 options.
DOM order. Navigate web pages by.
I'm going to slow down
Selected
my
radio.
VoiceOver speaking rate here because this might be too fast.
Volume 100. Pitch 50%. Rate 45. 40%. Closing rate.
So DOM order or
Grouping items. Navigate.
Grouping items are the 2 options. DOM order, document object model, is the default. And for me personally, I use probably DOM order, I'd say 95% of the time. It's really just a straightforward way of browsing the site exactly how it's laid out visually. So you really, for the most part, you use your VoiceOver arrow keys to kind of navigate and get a feel of how the website is laid out. And then you sort of can figure out if you can navigate more easily by certain element types, which
Cliff has joined the meeting.
We'll discuss in a few minutes here. So, like heading navigation or by form fields, etc. So DOM order is probably, the most straightforward and easy way to browse. And then you can always switch to grouping. Now, grouping kind of takes a page in some ways out of the Windows screen reader book, but not exactly. So what grouping does is VoiceOver attempts to take a very complex website and to group it into specific content areas to hopefully simplify and show you sort of, like what, the navigation, the global navigation bar. So all the things in the global navigation bar will be collected together. The main content area will be collected together. The footer will be collected together. So it does require interaction for a certain degree, but it sometimes can make things a lot easier. I'm going to try to demonstrate this. And for some reason, I don't know if it's this version because I'm doing beta stuff. So I'm not sure if this is effective.
Voiceover Safari.
So I'm going to go to apple.com.
Open location. Apple.com. Apple web content. Close. Apple in Apple.
So I'm going to interact with the web content. So this is DOM order.
Global navigation.
So there's your global navigation bar.
List 13 items. Visited. Apple. Visited. Store. Visited. iPad. iPhone.
I'm just going to quickly VO right arrow.
Accept support search end of shopping end of lit end of main heading level 2 iPad.
So then you have the main, you have the footer. So you're basically navigating this site pretty straightforward. So I'm going to jump back here.
VoiceOver utility. When grouping items, navigate web pages by radio button.
So I'm going to select this.
Selected.
And I'm going to go back to Safari.
Safari out of.
Now I'm going to do a reload of the page.
Reload page. Apple web. Close. Apple in Apple global navigation. Heading level 2 iPad.
Now, of course, it's not working the way it's supposed to. It automatically interacts me with it. But what grouping will do is it will separate the global navigation.
Out of Apple web content.
Navigation bar, the content area, and the footer area, so that they're separate content areas that you interact with individually. So the hope of this is that it makes your process of being able to kind of visualize how the website is laid out or how to find information a lot more efficiently by grouping things together. For me personally, it does help. I will preface this by saying it does help, particularly in forums. If you're trying to read the responses and stuff to forum questions, like if you go to the Apple knowledge base, I should say the Apple user forums. So if you're looking up a tech support issue and you want to see what other people are saying about it, somebody might offer a tip to fix it. So grouping does help because it does allow you to sort of see the responses and stuff and be able to navigate the forum with a lot more ease. But I'll be perfectly honest with you, I much prefer DOM order. I just like to look at the website pretty much the way it appears, you know, and to easily just navigate it. And then I use my, you know, my different types of navigation methods, navigating by headings, navigating by tables, you know, whatever the site I happen to be on. So if it's like my banking website and I want to see my deposit history, it's shown in a table format. So if I navigate to the first table, I can quickly get to the deposits and see, you know, what's cleared and all that stuff. So I just find personally that DOM order is the best way for me to navigate. But again, there are some blind people, maybe a few of you are on this call, who would swear by grouping. And I know I can think of two friends of mine, two Mac user friends, who would probably be very upset with me and take umbrage with me about the fact that I prefer DOM order over group order because they swear by grouping. So it really comes down to personal preference, but I just wanted you to understand the difference between the two. And I just wish that this beta version of Safari would actually show this better to you guys. That's the one thing about challenge to being a beta tester is things don't always work when you're using it the way it's supposed to.
VoiceOver.
So I'm going to go back to the VoiceOver utility and I'm going to select the second tab.
Web General tab 2. Select
General tab, and I'm going to go back here because there's two things in the General tab that I need to just let you guys.
Web rotor when loading a new web.
So when loading a new
web page.
Speak
web page summary when loading a new web page. Unchecked checkbox.
So this is, you can have VoiceOver basically sort of give you a summary of a website where it will tell you how many headings, how many let's say tables, etc. Before I forget,
when web general navigate selected. Navigate web page. DOM order selected. Web general tab 2.
Just wanted to put it back to DOM order before I forgot.
When loading a new web page. Speak web page summary when loading a new web.
So I usually keep this unchecked. Well, I kind of vary sometimes because I've been doing the web testing, so I kind of go back and forth with this. So this checkbox is up to you. So if it's checked, VoiceOver will give you the summary. So I'm just going to check this here.
Safari.
Go back to Safari.
Safari. Reload page. Web content. Apple page has 97 links, 22 headings, 5 form controls, 1 web spot, 7 landmarks, 1 frame, 5.
So you hear it's giving you a summary of what is on this website overall. Now, if you're somebody who's an experienced web browsing person, this stuff means something to you. You know, you want to know links, you want to know headings, form controls, gives you a basic idea of what you're going to be dealing with a site that you might not be familiar with at all. So that can be very useful. But if you don't have that checkbox checked, if you do a
Apple page has
VO Shift I,
Apple page has 97 links, 22 headings.
You can always call up the summary on its own. So in other words, you don't necessarily have to have this checkbox checked if you don't feel it necessary.
VoiceOver utility voice.
Now, the other thing I wanted you to hear in the general category.
While a web speak progress while a web page loads.
While a web page loads.
Speak progress while a web page loads. Pop-up button.
So this is a pop-up menu. So I have it at the moment speaking progress. because when I'm doing web testing, I want to know how quickly this website loads and if there's any issues with it from that perspective.
Menu.
But if I VO space,
Do nothing.
you have do nothing,
Play tone.
play tone,
Check mark. Speak
or
progress.
speak progress. I usually have it play tone if I'm doing my own
Speak
stuff.
progress.
And when it plays a tone, it makes a nice little clicking sound to let you know that progress is happening. And then when the clicking sound stops, you know that the web page has loaded fully. But again, this is personal preference. Whatever you happen to like. I know some people who have it do absolutely nothing, which I mean, I guess it's up to you, but I can't, to me personally, you have to have some kind of an indicator of a website loading, because sometimes websites get stuck. Sometimes they're not fully loaded. And if you have the indicator on, you'll actually hear it keep repeating, 70% loaded, 70% loaded, 70% loaded. So at least you have an idea if a website is actually fully loaded or not. But again, personal preference.
While automatic speak web general, navigate web rotor.
So web rotor is the third tab, and this has to do with using the quick nav feature, which I'll get into shortly. So this will determine what items do you want available
2 minutes
on the web rotor. So when you turn the rotor, which of the elements do you want to have available to you on the rotor? Some people like a lot. Some people like a lot of stuff on there available to them, different things. Some people like a very sparse rotor. Maybe they only want headings, links, form controls. They don't want to have text, static text, visited links, visited links. They may not want all of the things that are to offer. So when you look at this
web rotor tab 3 selected, select item order table.
There's a table you interact with.
In item order table, row 1 of 20. Item order links checked, checkbox selected. Item order links checked.
So links,
item order headings, form controls, web spots. So there's a whole bunch of things you can check out. And if you don't want it on your rotor, you simply uncheck the box. So this is, again, preference. This is the user's, what you guys feel most comfortable having available on your rotor. It's not set in stone. So in other words, you can experiment. You can come in here and you can uncheck certain things. And then if you decide later on, I really probably should have, whatever, check boxes or, buttons or whatever on the rotor. So you can come back here anytime and you can make changes to the whatever you want available for your rotor. So there are a couple of other things in the web category. I tend to leave everything else pretty much as the defaults. I don't find it necessary to change anything else, but obviously you as the user can make decisions. You can check out all three, the other two tabs, the navigation and general tabs, and you may find something that you want to change or experiment with changing. I simply don't. I just wanted to point out the areas that I felt really needed to be addressed for folks using the web. So I'm going to close my VoiceOver utility with Command Q, and we go back to Safari itself. So as I said, I am dealing with Safari for this lesson. Some of the things I'm going to be talking about, or most of the things I'll be talking about, does apply if you decide to use other browsers, particularly the browsing methods, quick nav and stuff. But your mileage may vary. I know with Google Chrome, sometimes some of the VoiceOver stuff doesn't work the way it's supposed to. I haven't really played with Firefox of late. It's gotten a lot better in recent months. But I just have not had the opportunity in the last few months to really load it and mess with websites. But when I was doing it, again, it's kind of like Google Chrome. Sometimes some of the VoiceOver features don't seem to work exactly how they should. Now, one of the first pieces of advice I offer, and this is just advice, people don't have to do this, but from working with clients over the years, particularly people new to using a Mac, I try to minimize the amount of clutter
that an application screen has if it's possible. So if you notice, I'm going to stop interacting.
Vertical splitter toolbar.
So basically, if you explore my Safari window, I have the toolbar,
Vertical splitter.
the vertical splitter,
Apple web content,
and the web content as the only areas that are in my window here. Now, if you do a VOM, Control Option M,
menu bar,
and you go to the right to the View menu.
Safari file, edit, view.
Now, if you work your way down the View menu, you'll notice there's all these different types of bars and stuff that you can have showing in the Safari window.
View menu, check mark. Always show toolbar and full customize toolbar. Always show tab, show favorites bar, Command Shift. B, show status bar, Command, show sidebar, Command Shift. L, show bookmarks sidebar, Command, show reading list sidebar, show shared with you, Command Control.
So you notice everything here says show, meaning that it's a toggle. So right now, all of these bars are hidden in my Safari window. And I do this on purpose. Even for as many years I've been using the Mac and VoiceOver since 2005, I still keep these bars hidden. Once in a while, I'll unhide like the favorites bar or the reader, depending on tasks that I happen to be doing at the time in Safari. But for general web testing, as I've been doing lately, I basically hide all of the bars. And I suggest to the new user that this is a good approach in the beginning, because sometimes, depending on the website, you don't end up in the content of the website. You end up elsewhere in the Safari window. And getting your way back to the web content is not always easy. One little trick, though, I will offer you is sometimes you end up in the toolbar. So if you find that you're in the toolbar, so I'm just going to go
edit menu. Apple
close this out here, go back
vertical
to the
split toolbar in toolbar.
I'm going to interact here just to give you an idea of what you'll hear.
Tab group picker. Tab group is currently selected. Go back menu. Go forward. Dim. Capital One shopping. Privacy report button. Add page to secure site certificate button. HTTPS://
So there is the address field here that you'll eventually get to, which obviously has the current website, apple.com. But keep in mind that the address bar can also be utilized as a Google search field as well. So in other words, you can type a URL or you can just type a string or a phrase, whatever, that you might be searching for Google. Now, if you get stuck in the toolbar, though, you would just have to uninteract and go to the right to find the web content, or
in section 1 item from Mac for the Blind Fall 2022 online in Apple web content.
You do VOJ and you will jump back into the content of the website. It might take a couple of jumps, but you'll get back into the content area. And the good thing about VOJ, Control Option J, is it automatically interacts for you. This is the jump to linked item command. And those of you who've taken my Finder classes or have worked with me privately, or the Reminders app, contacts, this is one of my favorite, this is one of my favorite commands that I like to use to quickly get from one content area to another and save myself a lot of navigation and aggravation. So it will work if you get stuck in the toolbar as well. And,
global now list 13.
So all I got to do is just start navigating, and I'm already interacted. So I don't have to do any interaction on my end here. So, again, it's a piece of advice. Keep your Safari window clear, as much debris as possible. And it just makes it easier for people to understand what they're quote unquote looking at. No pun intended. So if they do get lost in the Safari window, it's very easy for them to get back to the content. So Command L is your address bar. So when you do Command L, you go right into the toolbar where the address bar is.
Open location, https://
So it will read you the current website, and then you can overwrite it. It does have an autofill thing, but sometimes the autofill will drive people crazy because they get confused by what they hear. I will be perfectly honest with you. It does drive me crazy too. So I just normally just completely type out where I'm going and don't necessarily, not, I mean, most of the time, I don't necessarily rely on the autofill. I just type out every character of the website I'm going to, because a lot of times I found that the autofill puts a different website than I'm intending on going to, which can be sort of annoying when you find out that the wrong web page is loaded. So I just tend to type out where I want to go. So you type it out, and I'm just going to do again.
Apple.com,
And I'm going to
www.apple.
hit enter, and it will, load the web page.
Close, but Apple web content in Apple web content.
So type it out, hit enter. It will take you to the website where you're going. We'll talk about bookmarks and favorites and other ways you can quickly get to sites in a little bit. But just to give you a quick little how you get there kind of thing, Command and the letter L, like in Lima, opens the address bar. Now, once you're in the website, particularly if it's a website that you've never adventured on before, I tend to just do the good old fashioned
global list 30, visit, watch, air, TV.
Navigate to the right or the left to go back or forward, get a feel for how the website is laid out. Does this developer use a lot of headings? Are there a lot of crappy labeled images that make no sense? Do you have form fields that have to be filled out? I know somebody recently contacted me and said they had some issues with form fields, and navigating through form fields can make life a lot easier than trying to kind of work your way through and find, any edit boxes that have to be filled out or check any check boxes. But, I always try to explain to people the first run through, try to just use the VO arrow keys to give you an idea of how this site is laid out. What does it have on it? Because you'll discover tricks of your own, especially if it's a website that you go to a lot. Now, the problem with forms, though, is web forms can be very well written with accessibility, and all the check boxes or radio buttons, if you're doing a survey, are great. And it's a table, and it's very easy to figure out what question you're answering. Sometimes like they have the scales, from 1 to 10. So you have, 1 as the worst and 10 as the best. And you just kind of navigate and check the radio button that you feel corresponds to your feeling about that particular question. Did they provide good service for you? Was your hotel room clean to your satisfaction? And you can check the radio button that you feel most, fits your opinion of how you experience things. And then, there are edit fields, obviously, you can fill out. There are buttons. So getting a feel for any website, whether it's a form or not, you want to just kind of navigate straight through. And then once you kind of get an idea of how this site is laid out, then you can jump over to more specific content browsing. So the old-fashioned way of navigating websites a little bit more efficiently, it may not seem like that when I describe it now, but back in 2005, it was all we had. So it's kind of what I've stuck to over the years. And that's basically using keyboard commands to navigate in VoiceOver. So it's going to be a little key intensive. I'm not going to lie to you. So Control, Option, Command, and a letter navigates you by a certain element type. So if I do Control, Option, Command, H.
Heading level 2 iPad. Heading level 2 iPad Pro. Heading level 2 Apple TV 4K. Heading level 4 iPhone 14 Pro.
So it's navigating me forward by headings on the Apple website. If I add the Shift key, so now we have Shift, Control, Option, Command, H.
Heading level 2 Apple TV 4. Heading level 2 iPad Pro. Heading level 2 iPad.
We go backwards. So you have letters like L for link.
Learn more about order iPad. Learn more.
You have, if there was a form field on here, you could do J to go to the next form option. You could do T for table, F for frame, V for visited link, M for same item. So it's basically a little key intensive, but also remember that you can lock your voiceover keys with VO semicolon, so you can eliminate the need to have to hold down the control and option keys. So you would only have to do Command H or Shift Command H, for example, if you were going to navigate strictly by headings until you get to the heading that you're specifically, looking for. So it's not necessarily the most the easiest way, especially if you're somebody who doesn't like pressing a lot of keys. You may have a physical impairment as well as your visual impairment. I've worked with clients that have, neuropathy in their fingers, or have different types of conditions, or might be taking, certain medications that makes it difficult for dexterity. So it's not necessarily the most desirable way for most users to have to navigate. But again, like I said, back when Tiger came out, Mac OS Tiger, that's all we had. That's the way we browsed. If you wanted, you'd either just do the straightforward VO arrow keys, or you would just use the VO commands. So that's the first way to navigate. Now, the cool kids way came along. I think it might have been around Snow Leopard. No, not Snow Leopard, Mountain Lion or Lion. I forget where it came in. QuickNav, which those of you who use iOS with either the gestures or not, you might be familiar with the old QuickNav navigation method. Now on a Mac, it's pretty cool. It makes it very easy because you're only going to rely on the 4 arrow keys on your system for most of your navigation needs. So you basically toggle it on or off with the left and right arrow keys.
Quick nav on.
So I just press the left and right arrow keys. So if I just press the right arrow key by itself.
Order iPad Pro heading level 2 Apple TV, the Apple Experience, available starting November 4th. Learn more about Apple TV 4.
So I'm just going forward, just as if I would do VO right arrow. So instead of doing VO right arrow, I'm just pressing the left arrow. I mean, the right arrow by itself. So if I go left arrow by itself.
Available start the Apple Experience heading level 2 Apple TV 4.
I go backwards through the site. Now here's the neat thing about QuickNav though. So if you press the arrow combinations, you can carry out specific tasks. So for example, if I do the left and down arrows
out of Apple web content,
I stop interacting. If I do the right and down arrow,
main,
it interacts me with the, with the content area. If I do up and down arrow, I would activate a link. So let me just find
heading level lovable, available heading main, end of global, end of lit, lovable, and search Apple.search, accessories, only on Apple TV, AirPods, 7.
So we'll just do AirPods. So if I do up and down arrow,
AirPod support.
So it will take me to the AirPods page. So up and down arrow acts as basically VO space or a left mouse click in the sighted world. So it activates the item that you're on. Now, getting back to, as I said, with QuickNav, if you're familiar with it with iOS, you can turn the rotor. So you can do the same thing on the Mac by pressing the left and up or the right and up arrow keys.
Characters, navigation, buttons, landmarks, web spots, form controls, headings.
So I'm going left arrow. Now, if I do right and up arrow.
Form control, web spots, landmarks, buttons, navigation.
So I'm just going through the rotor. So if I want to,
buttons, landmarks, web spots, form control, headings.
So I'm on headings here. So if I hit the down arrow by itself.
Heading level 1, AirPods. Heading level 2, AirPods Pro. Heading level 2, AirPods.
So I'm going forward by heading. If I hit the up arrow by itself.
Heading level 2, AirPods Pro. Heading level 1, AirPods.
I go backwards.
David Mandel has joined the meeting.
So if you turn, you can navigate by whatever element type is, desirable simply by using the, the rotor, turning it to that specific element type and using the up or the down arrow keys to, basically go, navigate either forward or backwards. So again, it makes it possible so that you're only doing most of the required navigation simply by using your 4 arrow keys. You don't even have to, really do a lot of keyboard pressing until, let's say, for example, you have to log into a website or something like that. Now, there is an extension of QuickNav called single key navigation, which basically rips off a page from Windows or JAWS, where you can do, instead of having to do all the keyboard pressing like Control Option Command H or Control Option Command L, you can simply use the letter or a shifted letter instead. Now you toggle it on or off while QuickNav is on with Control Option Q.
Single key QuickNav off. Single key QuickNav on.
Now with it on, as I said, if I just press the letter H by itself.
Heading level 2 AirPods Pro. Heading level 2 AirPods.
If I do shifted H.
Heading level 2 AirPods Pro. Heading level 1 AirPods.
So it goes backwards. So you're basically eliminating the need for the additional Control Option and Command keys in effect. Now, one caveat I do have to point out, because I've had a few clients over the years get tripped up over this, and as much as they want to use the single key navigation, they run into one particular issue. If you have to log into a website with a user ID or password, or you're filling out a web form that requires edit fields like your name, your address, etc., you have to make sure you interact with the edit field before you can start typing your regular characters. If you don't interact with the edit field, your single key presses are going to be treated like, like navigation commands. So you can end up.
I found it easier just to turn QuickNav off instead of interact with the field.
Yeah, well, you could do that too. That's another quick trick. Or you could add the interaction and uninteract to the QuickNav commander as well, which is a little bit beyond the scope of this particular lesson. But there is a QuickNav commander in the VoiceOver utility. You have keyboard, numpad, trackpad, and QuickNav, and you could add your own single key navigation commands to the QuickNav commander. So what I did is I did I and shifted I to work to interact and uninteract if I wanted to just keep my fingers on the keyboard instead of having to jump off of it. But again, just like Cliff said, you could also just turn off QuickNav and when you're in the edit fields to start typing. So, there's different approaches, whatever works best for you, that's what you choose. So, but these are the 2 general ways that you can just do, I guess you call it long way navigation, or if you just kind of, learning the page or getting a feel for what's on the page, or, you know where you need to get to, but it's not important to get there quickly, I guess is the best way to say it. So that brings us to more direct, what I like, it's called content browsing. So there's a few little things you can do to increase your efficiency on websites. Now, it's funny because a lot of times over the years, I hear people often say, if they've used Windows for umpteen years, oh, it's much quicker and easier to do browsing in a Windows PC using JAWS or using Windows than it is to use VoiceOver on the Mac. And my response to those folks is you get out of what you put into something. In other words, if you're going to learn and play with a Mac for a couple of months and try to compare web browsing, just doing that when you've been a Windows user for 18 years or whatever, of course, Windows is going to seem easier. You got to know your screen reader. You got to know the tips and tricks. You got to be an experienced screen reader. You got to know how to use. You didn't become.
Johnny Vega has joined the meeting.
You didn't get to be a good Windows user overnight. It took years and years of using JAWS or Windows or whatever. I mean, I jumped from Window Bridge 2000 to Windows and JAWS back and forth. So you're talking about years and years of experience. Of course, you put that kind of experience behind you, you can web browse, you can do just about anything pretty quickly. So the same thing applies with the Mac. You know your screen reader, you do well with it. So content browsing is a really additionally good way to make your life much easier when you're looking at websites. Now, the first content browsing option that I like to go over is basically calling up the web item rotor manually. So if you do a Control Option U,
Headings menu.
you basically call up what would be on the rotor, but you're kind of, it's in a pop-up little window. So if you use your left and right arrows by themselves.
Form controls menu. No items in web spots menu. Landmarks menu. Buttons menu. Window spots menu. Links menu. Headings menu.
So you're kind of hearing your different options. Now, what this does is it separates all of the elements of the web page into these categories. So if I'm on the headings here, I just hit the down arrow.
Heading level 1, heading level 2, heading level 2, AirPod, heading level 2, AirPods.
So it's showing me, basically broke down this website to list all of the headings, and it does this for each category. Now, the only thing I kind of don't like, I think it may be a bug, is it actually used to tell you how many items were in each element type. So when you got to headings, it would tell you, 26 headings or whatever, but it doesn't do that for some reason now.
John,
Yes.
this is Rita. Can I ask you to just say that one more time? I just lost. Can you go over that just one more time? Right where you are.
Okay, so
with the content browsing.
Yes, so VOU brings up the web item rotor manually, so that you would use the left or the right arrow key to cycle through the different web elements. And then you can use the up or down arrow to explore the list of that specific element. So it literally breaks down the website to make it easier to navigate. Now, the additional thing you can do.
Links menu.
Is, you could go down.
Visited, Apple, visited, store, visited, Mac.
You could kind of.
Visited, Apple.
You could kind of just go down the list, but the cool thing you can do is you can type and narrow down what you're looking for in this specific category. So if I was looking for Mac and I just typed
visited, Mac, 2 items.
So now there's only 2 items that have the word Mac in it.
Visited, Mac, visited, Mac.
So there's 2 links that have the word Mac in it. So I went from all those links on the Apple website to just showing me the links that only have the word Mac in it. And you can do this for any category. So if you're on a news website and you look at the headings and you kind of know a couple of words from the article's headline that you're trying to find on that website, you can simply type those couple of words and the heading list will narrow down to match whatever it is that you just typed. So it's a really good way if you're specifically looking for something, like, let's say, one of my great examples I use when I'm teaching clients is Amazon. Everybody's favorite shopping website. But if you venture on the Amazon website, it's a mess. It's a cumbersome, gigantic mess of a lot of crap on there. So what you can do is you can use the item rotor, the web item rotor, calling it up manually. And if you're looking for music or you're looking for books, you just do the links list and type books or type music. And you narrow down those 400 and something links down to maybe 3 or 4. So it eliminates a lot of the heavy lifting that you would normally have to do if you were just going to browse the site the long way through. So that's one of my favorite approaches to web browsing. Now, there is the item chooser menu, which in effect does a similar sort of thing, but in a different approach. I'll tell you up front, I don't find the item chooser menu to be very efficient to use in a web situation. It's a much better system feature to use in other apps or in dialog boxes where you're looking for a specific button, for example. So let's say you have the print dialog up and you're looking for the PDF menu in the print dialog. You can use the item chooser menu efficiently to find that. But what the item chooser menu does is it literally takes everything on the screen and places it in
Johnny Vega has joined the meeting.
one gigantic vertical list.
Heading.
So I'm going to just do Control Option I, like an item chooser.
Item chooser menu.
And if I start to down
Vertical
arrow,
splitter. empty, AirPods, toolbar, show side, tab, go back, go, add, secure, reload, share, new, add, tab, clip, full, minimum, globe, lit, Apple,
So it
clickable,
literally shows you every single thing, including what's in the toolbar. Everything gets put into this vertical list. So you kind of have to work your way through this list if you want to find something specific. You can, again, you can type to narrow
tab,
down.
visited, Mac,
So I just typed Mac, and yeah, it will narrow it down to only
Mac, visited, Mac, compatible hardware, visited, Mac,
but it has some additional things on here that have the word Mac, because it's not, just links. Like before, I was just on the links list. So when I typed Mac, it only came up with 2 links. But the item chooser menu is going to have other things that have the word Mac in it as well. So again, it may be useful for you in specific situations, but I simply just don't ever really use the item chooser menu on the web, especially when you start dealing with really cumbersome, complicated websites where you end up at like literally 500 or 600 items in a vertical list. It's just a little overwhelming to me. So I would prefer to use the web item rotor called up and just focus on a specific element type, like links or headings, whatever it is that I'm happening to be looking for. Now there is the VoiceOver search command as well.
heading level 1,
So if you do Control Option F, like in Find, now this also works in other apps too, such as I use this a lot in documents if I'm looking for specific text within a document, but it does work on the web as well. So
enter search text, previous search.
So VOF will call up the search field, the little search box. Now it's a very simple search. You can type up to 20 characters. It keeps a 5-item history. So if you up arrow, you can go through the last 5 items that you've searched for, and then you can hit enter on an item that you want to repeat. But if you're looking for something new, so if I just type
M-A-C
Mac and I hit enter, it's probably not going to get
Mac OS.
Yeah.
Mac OS.
Okay. So, it's going to kind of get you to the first occurrence, which may not be helpful to you if you're looking for a link or you're looking for something completely different. It just takes you to the first occurrence of that word. But, so again, as I said, it's a much more, to me, it's a more practical search field thing to use in text documents, but it's still usable on the web. It's gotten a lot better. I remember a few operating systems ago, you were sort of hit or miss doing VOF, but at least it does find the first occurrence of a word, if you use it. And there's the Command F search, the global search too, if you really wanted to do that. And it works in a similar fashion, but at least you can have case sensitivity and other bells and whistles to your search that you don't have with Control Option and the letter F. To me, I don't really use Command F that often. I usually know what, Control Option F when I'm working in documents does the job. So I typically I stay away unless I'm doing a search and replace, a global search and replace in a document. Then I will use Command F, because then you have the check boxes for find and replace all and all that stuff. So that is an instance in which I will, but I don't really use Command F on the web myself. Now, another sort of content browsing trick you can use is what are called web spots. And you can have up to 10 web spots on a page. And they're sort of like bookmarks, place markers, whatever you want to call it, for marking a web page. So, if there's a certain link that you always go to, or a certain text area that you often go to when you start looking at a web page, you can set a web spot, and VoiceOver remembers that web spot. So the next time you come back to that site, you can navigate by web spots and you can go back to that spot, provided that the website itself does not dynamically update or the developer makes changes to that page, because The web spot is static. It stays in the same physical location on a web page, but that doesn't mean that the item you have marked with the web spot doesn't move. Because if a developer has made changes to the site or it dynamically refreshes, that link that you might have marked, for example, might move several places over. I'll give you a great example. I play fantasy sports, fantasy football, etc. So the Yahoo Fantasy page for my team in the beginning of a Sunday before the 1 o'clock games, I'll mark the spot on the page where the matchup totals start for whom I'm playing against. Now, the problem is because it's a Yahoo page and things happen during the course of a day, guys get hurt. Some guys have big games, some guys have terrible games, and there's always news things that come up. So by, let's say, 3:30, 4 o'clock, when I go back to the Yahoo site, I jump to that web spot. It's no longer where I expect it to be. So I have to go find where where the matchup totals start up again. So that's an example of a site that, dynamically refreshes, but there are a lot of web sites where they stay fixed. So you can have that web spot on there for years and it will still be in the same place. And I have some sites that I've been browsing for a very long time and the web spot hasn't changed. So
Zoom user has joined the meeting.
Matt left parent. Coming.
Let's see here.
Out of text. Heading level 3. Shop and learn.
Let me see where I want to mark this.
Make them yours. Engrave your AirPods with your initials or favorite emoji. Free. Heading level 2. Apple footer.
All right, well, just for the sake of argument, we'll mark the Apple footer for whatever the reason. So the way you create a web spot is you do the VO. This is kind of keyboard intensive here to warn you. It's Shift VO Command right bracket.
Web spot set.
So Shift Control Option Command right bracket. Now the right bracket is, if you find the P key, the left bracket is directly to the right of the P key, and the next one over is the right bracket. So VO Shift Command right bracket will mark the web spot. You can destroy a web spot with the Shift VO Command left bracket if you want to get rid of it. Now I'm going to jump to the top of the page here.
Global navigation.
And I'm going to use the go to next voiceover, the next web spot, which is, you can either use the VO Command right bracket, drop the Shift key.
Heading level 2. Apple footer.
So that took me right to the Apple footer where I marked the spot. But I also could use the rotor and turn the rotor with quick nav on to web spots. And I can navigate that way if I don't want to do all the keyboard contortions to do all those keyboard commands. So as again, you can have up to 10 of these guys basically on a web page. So you can mark it up at least 10 different times. And then if you have another page on that site, you can continue to add web spots to the subsequent pages. So for example, if you mark the web, on the main Apple site, but then you go to the Mac page because you might be interested in maybe buying, the new Mac Mini M2s that are supposed to be coming out or whatever, you can mark web spot that particular area. So it can be useful for a lot of things depending on what you need to do on the web. I will also mention what are called sweet spots. Now, I will tell you from experience, they don't work all the time as advertised. It seems to be related, from what I'm able to tell, to the website itself. Now, you do a sweet spot with the web spot command twice in a row. So Shift VO Command right bracket 2 times. You can only have a sweet spot in one location on a web page. And what is theoretically supposed to happen is when you load that web page, the VoiceOver cursor is supposed to directly go to that location where you've marked the sweet spot on the page. So you don't have to do any VoiceOver commands. The VoiceOver cursor goes right there. Now, it works sometimes. I will tell you, I've had many experiences where it really works like a charm and it's pretty impressive. But there are also a lot of instances in which I can't figure out they don't work. So I'm guessing it has to do with the website itself. So I'm not sure why it does that, but that's just what happens. So use it with, your mileage. As the expression goes, your mileage will vary. So use it at your discretion, but it's a good feature if it works. Now, we also do have bookmarks in the Mac world. Command B will open up the bookmarks dialog. So when you want to add a bookmark, you have to keep in mind that you're offered locations where the bookmark can be saved. There is, I'm just going to do a VOM here.
Menu bar, app, Safari, file, edit, view, history, bookmarks.
There is a bookmarks menu, there is a favorites bar, and there is the history. So when you do a command to save a website as a bookmark, so I'm just going to do Command B here. Wait, are you not going to work here? Am I doing the right?
Add bookmark in
I'm sorry,
dialog.
It's Command D, like in dog. Sorry about that. Command D, like in dog. So you notice it's a dialogue.
AirPods, Apple, VoiceOver resources, AirPods, Apple, contents selected.
So that's the website itself.
Description, edit text,
So
blank.
you can add a description if you want to.
Cancel button.
Cancel.
Add default button. Add this page to VoiceOver resources, pop-up button.
So there's a pop-up menu here. Now I've created my own folders, so you're not going to hear some of the things that you're going to hear in this menu.
Menu, check mark, VoiceOver bookmarks.
So you have bookmarks, which is basically that bookmarks menu.
Favorites.
The favorites, where it gets added to the favorites bar.
Fantasy, sports, and relate. Untitled folder. Apple knowledge base article. Apple tutorial. Check mark. Old fantasies. Apple.
So if you add your own folders to this list, you can pick additional places where you can save your bookmarks. Now, the thing about the favorites, though, is you can have up to the first 10 favorites you can launch with Option, Command, and a number. So in other words, let's say I made apple.com my number one in the favorites list. Instead of having to go Command L and type apple.com or, looking for it in the bookmarks menu or the favorites bar, I should say, I can just type Option Command 1 and it will take me directly to apple.com. So the first 10 favorites that you add, 1 through 0, you can do Command Option 1, Command Option 2, go all the way to 0, and you can activate that particular bookmark. Now, you can have a ton of bookmarks. You can have a ton of favorites. You can basically, edit those favorites and add folders when using the edit bookmark command, which I believe is
VoiceOver
here.
AirPods. Add to reading list.
No, that's the wrong command. Sorry.
Menu bar.
So let me just go over to the bookmarks menu.
History, bookmarks.
And I'm going to go down, VO down.
Bookmarks. Show start page. Show bookmark. Edit bookmarks. Command Option B.
Command Option B. Okay. So this is how you could edit bookmarks. So if you wanted to, add folders, if you wanted to delete bookmarks that you didn't want anymore.
Edit bookmark.
It comes up
bookmarks table.
It comes up as a table. And then you can expand or collapse the different categories.
In book address, 8 website, favorites, favorite image, bookmarks menu, drag image, collapse tab group favorites, bookmarks menu, drag image, collapsed.
So you notice it says collapsed. So remember that your VO / collapses
expanding,
or expands,
bookmarks menu.
Expands these types of situations where you have they call it disclosure triangle.
Work, move image, Apple, start, Enya.com, Moya Brennan, Sinofko Karaspla.
So we have my, my basically what's my bookmarks on the when I go to do the VOM, these are the things that are under the bookmarks menu. So it's a separate entity from the favorites bar. So I want to make that try to make that clear to you guys that the bookmarks menu is the bookmarks that appear from the bookmarks menu. The favorites bar is an option, an offshoot from the bookmarks menu, but you do have a separate entity called the favorites bar that you can show or hide from the view menu. So it's up to you how you want to organize your bookmarks? Do you want to make them on the bookmarks menu or on the favorites bar? Some of these bookmarks were just added working with clients over the years, and I really have to one of these days just sit down and delete some of this stuff. Just sometimes when you work with people over the years, just to show them how things are done, you end up adding and putting things into your bookmarks and favorites that I don't necessarily visit myself, and I just haven't gotten around to removing them. Now you also
Out of
can,
bookmarks.
if I stop interacting.
Close button. Book search text field. New folder. Bookmark. New folder button.
So you have new folder. So this is where you could create your own additional folders. So you notice that I had Apple knowledge base articles, voiceover tutorials. I created my own folders to organize, the different bookmarks that I need to have access to and the favorites that I need to have access to. So you can, basically organize things any way that you choose. You may have to kind of experiment a little bit and get a feel for things, but once you get you wrap your head around how to edit the bookmarks and keep on top of them, you can keep a very organized system, which I've slowly been moving towards. My problem is I've merged bookmarks from different Macs and from PCs over the years, that I have so much stuff in my bookmarks and favorites that some of them are so outdated, they don't even exist anymore. I just haven't had a chance to kind of sit down and really ferret out the things that I don't need at this point. So that's how you would organize your bookmarks. Now, the only other thing I just wanted to discuss here, well, there's two things I wanted to discuss here. Firstly is downloads. So when you download something, it's just like in Windows, you'll click on the link or whatever it is to download an item, provided that it's not something that downloads in, 0.2 seconds. Command, Option, and the letter L will open up the downloads menu. I should say screen, whatever you want to call it, window, whatever it's called. And it will show you your list of current downloads in a table. And it's just like in Windows, you can see the download progress, how much is downloaded, how much is left to go. And there's also a button to show in Finder. So once the download is completed, you can press VO space on the show in Finder, and you'll take you right to Finder and show you the file in your downloads folder. So my point here is that it's not visible by default when you do downloads. So you have to do Option, Command, and the letter L to get the downloads to appear, the downloads window. So just keep that in mind. And then you can clear your downloads if you feel that you don't want to have that list anymore. Usually it does, it seems to me, it seems to clear itself during reboots, but I'm not sure if that's my imagination, or I just haven't really been downloading a lot of things lately on my Mac, which is really not true because I have.
Zoom.us has new.
But it seems that anytime that I download something, I should say when I reboot it, the downloads window seems to be empty other than the latest thing that I'm downloading. The last thing I want to talk about is the Safari Reader. And there is, to my knowledge, I think this exists in Firefox and Chrome. I'm not 100% sure about Firefox, but I'm pretty sure it exists in Chrome. So the Reader feature is basically a cited feature. It's not something that was developed for VoiceOver users, but we take advantage of it. So a lot of times when you read documents and articles online, it's a mess. There's all of these social media links, self-plugs, and it just makes trying to read a document or an article in context very, very difficult. Even for a sighted person, I've spoken to sighted people that hate the way some web pages present articles because you can't really follow the article because it's got all this other nonsense cluttering it. So what the Reader feature does, and it is available in iOS as well, by the way, in Safari, is it clears out all the extraneous links and images and garbage that doesn't belong in that article or document, and it leaves only the text of the article and anything that's relevant to that article or document. So once it's done, you just do a VOA to read all, Control Option A, and you can basically read the entire article or document in the way it's supposed to be read. Now, Command Shift and the letter R in Safari, Command Shift and the letter R, not Command R reloads a page. Command Shift R will load the reader format if it's available. Don't always assume that the website is optimized or developed in a way that the reader will work in all cases. Sometimes, like an Apple Insider, for example, you try to read articles on Apple Insider and Command Shift R does nothing because of the way that it's formatted. So my point is, if it doesn't work, it's not necessarily anything going on with you. It could just be that that article or document is not formatted in a way that will load the reader. Sometimes the reader will load part of an article. So don't, if you're like sitting there going, I could swear there's a lot more to this article. Most likely you're right, because sometimes the way the article's formatted, when you do the reader format, it cuts out parts of the article because of the way it's formatted. So you may have to go back and just read it the old school way and have to deal with all the extraneous nonsense. Now, if you do put something into the reader format, you can share it and email it to people in the reader format. So, a lot of times when people share links, they just send a link in the email to somebody. So they have to open the email message, click on the link, and they go to the website, and they're good luck to finding the article themselves. If you have an article loaded in the reader format and you share it by email and you send it to another blind person, or any person for that matter, the text of the article will go in the email. They'll have a link to the site if the person wants the original, where you got the original article from. It's at the top. But the cool thing about it is, as a blind user, the article text is right there in the email. You don't have to go looking for it if you don't want to. So that's typically how I share articles or documents that I find online that I want to share with, let's say, a client or with friends or whatever who are blind. And I have a couple of sighted friends that have learned to do this for me when they want to send me something they think I'm interested in reading. So just as a side note about the reader feature. All right. So I know it's, as I said, I kind of compressed a couple of lessons into just over an hour here. So there are some material that I went quickly through, and there might be some odds and ends that I did not have time to cover. But in general, this should give folks a pretty good direction to using Safari on their Mac. Let's open the floor up to some questions.
You have to, I have, 25 years worth of bookmarks myself. So if you want to reorder them, do you have to drag and drop? I mean, I know that I need to delete probably.
Well, you can do Command C to copy, Command V to paste. So you can move them around that way and just delete the copies. That's how I do it. I mean, yeah, you can drag and drop, but I find drag and drop to be, I find drag and drop sometimes to be unreliable. So I simply just copy and paste and delete the duplicate if I want to move things around in my list.
Oh, okay.
That's basically how I've been doing it.
Okay, question about if you're just so completely lost. Like, say you go to, let's just, recipes.com, and you're looking for a recipe, and there's these embedded videos. And I know, you turn quick nav on, and well, first you'd go Command L when you first go to Safari, right? And type in recipes.com/broccoli casserole, say, okay? Would you
and
do
your
that?
browser blows up. Yeah, your browser blows up because who eats a broccoli casserole? But anyway, yes, that's what you would do. Yes.
Okay, and then you're there, and then you turn quick nav on, and then you turn the rotor.
You actually never have to turn it off. If you do Command L and just start typing, it'll go right to it. You don't have to turn quick nav off to do that.
Okay, so then you turn the rotor with the up and the right arrow to say headings. So like, first, this
if you have
recipe.
single letter navigation on, you could just hit H if you wanted to do that, just to make your workflow a little shorter.
Okay. All right. So
and remember remember to turn the single letter navigation on as a VOQ, just in case anybody didn't catch that before.
Yeah, because it is a toggle too.
Okay, got it. Okay, so while the quick nav is on, you can do VOQ, correct?
Yes. Mhm.
Yes.
Okay.
It will
okay.
not work. I'm glad you said that. It will not work with quick nav off. It will not.
Yes. Some people
Okay.
think it does, but it doesn't. I know
tried
there are
that.
some people.
Exactly.
Yeah, it does
Okay.
not work. Yeah.
VOQ will not work when it's quick. Okay, I'm trying to make.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Quick nav is off. Okay.
Right.
So I do the H. I find the recipe. Okay. So then I hit the up and down arrow together to get to that, to activate that.
Once you're on
I
it, yes.
turn quick nav off, and I can line by line arrow down to, the heading, the ingredients, the directions.
Yes,
to
if it's
copy.
text, yeah, if it's formatted like that with the text, yes.
Okay, the issue I'm finding is a lot these videos autoplay with when you're in a recipe and you've gotten 5 of the ingredients copied, and then all at once there's a video that starts playing, or
Right.
something happens, like you get so lost, you're just like, where am I? Okay, so a lot of times when I'm totally lost like that, I just like I shut it down and I go back in, and I know that's really the long way to do it.
Well, if it's a video that plays, try the letter K to see if that pauses the video.
Okay.
It's not going to work in all instances, but it's, it tends to the standard YouTube type video player that often pops up on these sites. The letter K acts as a pause and resume. So just as I'm not guaranteeing you on recipes.com that that's going to work, but it's worked in a lot of places that I've,
Okay, when videos audio play.
Yeah. Yeah, because I've run into that a lot myself. I hate that. I've done that with certain sites where they just start playing the video, and it's like, if you're blind, okay, that's great.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So for example, that video play is playing, and you're trying to capture this text, and you hit K, and it pauses. What do you do then? Do you keep arrowing to
You
get
should
down
be able
to
to keep arrowing, but what you can also try, and again, this doesn't always work. I want to make sure I preface this, but if you have quick nav on and let's say, for example, that the broccoli casserole information is like, there's a heading that says, broccoli casserole, whatever, that particular, and then the next heading is a different version of that recipe. Now, if you start off on the first heading, you have quick nav turned on and you're on the headings in the rotor, if you hold the shift key down and you hit the letter, the down arrow, that should highlight everything between that heading and the next heading. And then you can do a command C to copy to the clipboard. So it should grab everything between those two headings. But again, let me just be perfectly clear here. It really relies on the formatting and how that developer has formatted this stuff, because it doesn't always work, but it does. And I've let's just say I've used it more times than not. It works. I mean, it's just so many of these companies, like banks, do this a lot, where you get their website is at least accessible enough where you can look up your deposits or whatever, and then you go back there like a month or two later, and they changed everything, and it's like, what happened? It's not accessible anymore.
Right.
So and unfortunately, it's amazing to me in 2022 that we're still having this same conversation that we could have been having in 2010 with web accessibility, and it's gotten better in some instances.
Right.
There's an awareness out there, and I'm not trying to make it like doom and gloom for everybody, but the reality, as a blind screen reader user, you have to keep that in the back of your mind, that you're going to encounter a lot of websites that you have to do workarounds on. And it's frustrating and it's annoying, but it is doable. And as long as you use these screen reader tips and, the Safari things we went over with content browsing and web spots, and you can find combinations of these tools to help you deal with partially accessible sites. It doesn't mean you're going to have success in all areas, just like the post office one. But
Yeah.
you know, there are instances where you can do enough of a workaround. Let's say you're looking to buy some really odd thing that's not really available on Amazon. It's a specialty item and you got to go to this specific website, you know, the Wile E. Coyote Acme website or something. And you can only buy it there, but the website is only partially accessible. So you may have to find little approaches, little things that you can do to make it possible so that you can buy that one tool that you need to get. You know, so, you know, as the old expression, where there's a will, there's a way.
Right.
You know,
Now,
it's just that as a blind person, people get frustrated very easily and they just give
Yeah.
up. And
I
you
do.
can't. You
Right.
got to kind of work. And you know, it challenges your own skill set, and it
Right.
really makes you, you know, become a better screen reader user and a better web user when you have to figure out workaround ways to get things done for yourself.
Well, my question though is with that, do things work differently? Like I've tried it on my phone, on my iPhone. Would it perhaps work a little bit differently if I use Mac?
It may, because the iPhone, usually they use a mobile version of websites,
Right.
which is stripped down and may not have all of the extraneous stuff on it. So I always try to, you know, suggest to people like Facebook, for example, if you're a big Facebook junkie, using the Facebook website on the iPhone is a better experience than using
Yes.
it on a Mac or a PC. You know,
Definitely.
obviously using the Facebook app is probably your best approach, but I hate the Facebook app anyway, but that's a different story. So you might be out of the mobile versions of Amazon, mobile versions of Facebook, mobile versions of, you know, a good little trick, by the way, doesn't work all the time, but try, if there's a specific website that you're trying to go to that normally is a mess, try whatever that URL is. So
Okay.
m.facebook.com in the address bar. And that will force the web browser to load the mobile version of that website. And you may have better luck, you know, trying to navigate. It doesn't work in all instances. Not everybody uses that what's the term for that? Yeah, that, you know, so just be aware of that. All right, folks, you all have a good rest of the day, good rest of the week.
Remember, for all Mac, iOS, and any kind of Apple training, visit macfortheblind.com. Joh Panarese has some free courses and some reasonable paid courses. You won't be disappointed. See you next time.